growth. We've been speeding up the speed with which we can sequence a genome, so we're going to finish actually somewhat early. Miniaturization is another exponential trend. We're shrinking technology right now at a rate of 5.6 per linear dimension per decade. And that's been going on for a very long time. Telecommunications is even more dramatic than computing. Brain scanning speeds, I mentioned. There's a wide variety of phenomena that follow this exponential growth. And the other interesting thing I noticed on this chart is that it's actually double exponential growth. On this logarithmic chart going back to 1900, a full century of exponential growth of computing, it's on a logarithmic graph is actually an exponential. And Hans and I have been trading formulas to try to find some sort of mathematically sensible derivation of this double exponential. And Hans' formulas are actually more aggressive than mine. So I'm actually the conservative in that particular dialogue. His actually end up going even faster than double exponential growth. But as Doug showed, exponential growth alone is quite sufficient. But I think it's important to not only look at this in terms of a theoretical approach of what speed paradigm shifts occur, and the fact that paradigm shift has, in all of these processes, kept exponential growth going in these technological processes. We need to identify the actual technologies that are likely to be the sixth paradigm now in terms of continuing exponential growth of computing. It's quite clear that the sixth paradigm will be the third dimension. We live in a three-dimensional world. Our brain is organized in three dimensions. Why not use the third dimension? Chips are flat. And there are already, as in times past, competing technologies that are already working in limited degree in laboratories. In fact, since both Hans and my book came out, there's been significant developments. There was one announced just last week by IBM in molecular computing and building circuits in three dimensions. My favorite is nanotubes, which are these hexagonal arrays of carbon atoms that are very strong. They can do computing without heat. Superconducting, by manipulating the structures, you can create three-dimensional structures that do computing. I figured out that a 1-inch cube of nanotube circuitry would be about 1 million times more powerful than the human brain. So, I mean, we can touch and feel already the technology, the sixth paradigm that will keep this going well beyond any of the scenarios we're likely to talk about today. And by 2019, according to my calculations, $1,000 of circuitry will equal the 20 million billion calculations per second that the human brain is capable of. And those calculations vary depending on whose estimate. There are a few orders of magnitude difference. The estimate I'm using is, I think, towards the conservative side. By 2029, $1,000 of computation will equal 1,000 human brains. By 2050, $1,000 of computation will be 10 to the 26 power calculations per second, which is the amount of computation that takes place in all human brains on Earth today, all biological brains. And that 10 to the 26 power is flat. I mean, that's not growing. That hasn't grown for a long time. I mean, it's growing at the rate of population growth, but that's extremely slow. It's basically flat compared to non-biological computation, which is growing at this double exponential rate. Okay, that provides the requisite computing power, but that doesn't automatically give you human-level intelligence. The software of intelligence, I think, is even more important. And there are many different approaches to this. I talk a lot about reverse engineering the human brain and deriving the templates of intelligence from understanding the human brain. And I do that not because I feel that's necessarily the only or even the predominant strategy that we will use. I think we will continue basic artificial intelligence research. We will use biologically inspired models that are not exact copies of biological systems, such as genetic algorithms, neural nets, and there are a whole variety of other biologically inspired algorithms. As we learn more about the human brain, we have more powerful biologically inspired models. For example, Carver Mead's work at Caltech were based on actual scans of the early visual processing of the brain, and also has a similar project in the auditory processing. These are digitally controlled analog chips that perform very much the same functions that we see in these these biological neural networks in mammals, and his chips are used in high-end digital cameras. So we will use biologically inspired models, but I think the easiest scenario to understand is the reverse engineering of the human brain. I mean, we have 500 or 600 examples in this room, and it's not hidden from us. And human brain scanning is another one of these exponential trends. You can see the speed, resolution, bandwidth of brain scanning is increasing actually at a double exponential rate. That's what my own charts show. And partly that's due because it's driven by computational increases. If you consider the following scenario, by 2029, this will be a conservative scenario. We can almost build devices like this today, but not small enough. But if we send billions of nanobots through the bloodstream, they would travel in very close physical proximity to all of the key neural features in the brain. We have scanning technology already. There's one very impressive scanning technology from the Weizmann Institute in Israel, where the scanning tip is right near the neural features. It can see the neural features non-invasively with extremely high resolution. So we could scan my brain today by just moving the scanning tip very close proximity to all the neural features in my brain. If we want to wait to be able to do this without making a mess of things, we would want to send the scanners through the bloodstream. Well, there's a whole issue as to what resolution you want to scan the human brain. If we look at a number of experiments that have been done at emulating neural functioning, then neural interconnections, neurotransmitter concentrations, synaptic clefts are sufficient to reverse engineer and understand the basic information processing of the regions that we have already reverse engineered. Now, there's arguments. Some people say, no, you've got to look at every single dimple on every single axon and dendrite and get the exact shape. And if, in fact, you increase the resolution with which you have to understand the human brain by a factor of 1 billion, that still only sets you back by about 27 years because of the exponential growth of these systems. And I think we need to distinguish between downloading the human brain as one scenario, which has been particularly controversial, and just understanding basic human intellectual processes, which we have actually done with certain regions of the brain that we have access to. We use in our speech recognition software the results of understanding of the early auditory cortex, and when that information came available, it dramatically increased the accuracy of our speech recognition software. We don't have access to the bulk of the human brain, but when we can scan it from inside, what we find are that there are very repetitive features, repetitive patterns in the organization of each of the regions of the brain. The brain is not really one information processing organ. It's hundreds of different regions. Each of those information processing organs is organized completely differently, but there's a great deal of repetitiveness in those regions. They're dynamic systems. As we understand the nature of dynamic systems from things like genetic algorithms and neural nets, we can build systems that are inspired by our understanding of the reverse engineering of the human brain. I think the most powerful way that we will build software, the way that the kind of work that I've done, which is pattern recognition, has built software, is by self-organizing systems, not traditional artificial intelligence or expert systems where we program rules or where we do combinatorial explosions like Deep Blue. But really the strength of human intelligence is that massive parallelism we have, which allows us to do very deep pattern recognition. My own work with neural nets is we build the neural nets going beyond traditional neural nets of just 3 simple models. When we create very complex nets with many different layers and complex interconnection schemes and lots of neurons, they become harder to train, providing education of those neural nets becomes more complex, more challenging, but we get much more intelligent behavior. When we can build neural nets that are at a human scale, when we can see how the human brain is organized,